Welcome to the Inside the Sales Playbook, where on each and every episode, we dive into the actual sales processes, plays, and strategies working for teams today. No high-level overview, we get into the actual weeds of what some of the fastest growing and most successful sales teams are doing today to drive revenue and grow their businesses. And we've got two sponsors. Inside the Sales Playbook is sponsored by SalesKit. SalesKit takes the guesswork out of scaling your sales knowledge all within one great platform, making it easier than ever for your team to access the sales knowledge that actually works. Sign up for a free trial today at www.getsaleskit.com and buy my book, Raise Your Standards, the definitive guide to building seven-figure sales. You can get a free copy of the book to help grow your sales, whether you're an entrepreneur, sales leader, or sales contributor at www.getsaleskit.com/book. And I'm really excited for today's guest. I first heard him on a podcast I listened to recently. I learned a ton just in the quick 25-minute podcast when I was listening to our guest, Mr. Robert Cornish. Robert is the chairman of RGC, the founder and CEO at Richter Productions, Content One. He's also an author, and I'm excited to talk to him about that. And really, one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to Robert is because him and his companies have been named an Inc. 5000 award winner for the past 5 years running. Now, I can't tell you the stats about how many businesses don't even make it to 5 years in business, let alone be recognized as Inc. 5000. For those that don't know, it recognizes the fastest growing businesses in the United States. So I'm super excited to have Mr. Robert Cornish on the show. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, Robert, how about you give the listeners a little bit of context here? First, what is Richter? Let's kind of concentrate it around Richter. And how do you help your clients achieve their mission?
So Richter is an agency, and our mission, we work with the largest B2B companies in the world, generally tech, media, entertainment, and finance. And our mission is really to help support the B2B sales journey from start to finish. And in simple terms, that simply means that we're focused on advertising, sales enablement, training, and customer experience. And we look at all the gaps within that journey. So when you think about that entire journey, it could be internal training, it could be external sales enablement content, it could be some ad strategies to help drive new business. It could be things along those lines that when you think about an enterprise sale for B2B companies, large B2B companies that are maybe 10 billion, 20 billion, so on and so forth, there's a lot of different gaps and things that change within that journey. And our job is to help support them and use communication aesthetics to kind of move people through that journey in a way that's compelling and in a way that helps support sales. So we've always been very sales-centric as an agency. We create a lot of content. We've done a lot of video, mainly because video is really the vessel or the vehicle to deliver that communication, but we're really focused on what's inside of the video. So how do we write copy? How do we do some research to understand who's watching it? Why are they watching it? What problem are they trying to solve? And understanding communication at a level that it's going to make a difference.
I love that. That sounds really good. And I know there's going to be a lot of good takeaways, whether you're an organization that's selling enterprise level accounts or even SMB accounts. I'm sure there's a lot of principles and foundations that we'll get into in a little bit that will apply nicely to kind of wherever you're at in business. But let's kind of start from the beginning, Robert. Of all the things you could have done, man, why the heck did you choose sales, and how did you kind of come about with your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I mean, so I've always really been an entrepreneur in my view. I didn't know the word when I was a kid, but for me, it started back when I was like 8 or 9 or 10. I always knew that I was going to work for myself. That was kind of how I phrased it. I was like, I'm going to work for myself, and that was always my thing. And so I was always kind of envisioning the business or the thing that I was going to start with. And it kind of evolved over the years. The first sort of venture that I did was back when I was about 19, 20, and I got into real estate. At first I was trading stock and doing some stock investment stuff. That helped me do some real estate. I cashed in the stocks that I was doing, ended up doing some micro lending. And I would lend $15,000, $20,000 to people who were fixing up properties and doing renovations at an interest rate and a fee, and then they would pay me back. And that was kind of my first year, my first venture. It was more like a solopreneur type thing. And that kind of leapfrogged into an actual real estate investment company that I got into. We built that to like $964,000 the first year.
That's awesome.
And then the second year to 1.3 million. And, I kind of cut my teeth on that and then just realized at some point that I don't for whatever reason, I didn't really want to do real estate.
Yeah.
And I majored in marketing. I saw somebody speak at my school on advertising. I love that. I knew another company that did advertising, and it was kind of just stuck in my head. And there was an element that I wanted to do. And I wrote down a couple ideas that arrived at Richter essentially. So it was a few ideas pieced together that made me finally realize and go, oh, I know what I want to do. And then I went all in on that.
That's awesome. Do you remember one of those first ideas that now is one of the cornerstones of your business, or that still plays a part today?
It's not a cornerstone of the business anymore. It's interesting because I would say to anybody who's listening that sometimes the idea is going to totally change, right? Like sometimes you start with something and it's not the thing, but it is the thing that gets you started. And for me, it was back when, back in 2008, 2007, actually, you could create a whole bunch of social profiles and sites and all these other things and kind of leverage those tools to dominate the first page of Google. Right. So if you typed in Richter, for example, every single search result on the first page of Google was exactly the way I wanted it to look. So we took that, and it was something that I realized before I started Richter, and I was working on my own personal sort of online PR, and I called it web media PR at the time. And I realized that people had negative PR. I came across some people that had negative PR online, like negative results.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we could bury those. Like we could bury those 6, 7, 8 pages deep. And at the same time, get more attention for them and help them drive business, right? And so that was the initial pitch. And we started reaching out to companies, and we had like companies that were finance companies and had negative reviews from FINRA and other things. And there was a lot of companies that had negative things that happened on Google. So the first iteration of Richter was just burying those things. And then it kind of evolved into focusing more on the sales side of things and growing, because that was really what people needed. And it started to move in that direction. But initially, it was honestly just a reputation management side of things is where we started. But we don't do that at all anymore. So it's kind of interesting because I think that you don't have to have the perfect idea to start. You do have to have a idea and something that brings value, something that people will pay for, and something that will get the gears turning of the company. And you may totally evolve and shift. There's plenty of companies out there that have started as something and turned into a Fortune 500 company doing something totally different.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really great. But I like the idea of just starting, right? You have to get started with something. I think that's really powerful. Let me ask you this, Robert. What makes a really good leader? I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that are currently listening to the show. What do you think in your mind makes a really good leader that creates a culture of growth? As we talked about before, I can just sense this in your energy that you're always going, you're always moving, you're always striving for that next goal, right? How does a leader facilitate that type of energy as well as just culture at a company like Richter's?
I first of all, I think you have to want it. You have to try and care about your people and care about, for me, I'm very natively motivated about other people's potential. And it's not a cliche thing for me. I find myself pushing people to their potential. And I think that when you look at any great sports team, I'm always looking at people going, look, I know where you're at. I know you can be this. And currently you're this, and I'm trying to push them to their potential. So there's a couple things. I think you have to empower people and you have to trust them. You have to sort of put it on them, not solve all of their problems. You have to put the right people in certain places and then sort of lean on them and push them to become their potential and kind of rise up to that level. At the same time, there's cultural things that you want to set the pace for and kind of go, like we have 12 core values that we created and that we share and that we actually give out badges every week. When somebody hits a core value, we have this page where you can unlock a badge and you can get it one time or two times. And it's a little thing, but over time, it says, look, these are the things that we care about at Richter.
Yeah.
And those things become culture. And so I think as a leader, it's up to you to sort of help set the culture and set the expectation of like, what is high standard here?
Yeah.
And lead. And at the same time, push others to be leaders.
Mm.
Push others to be leaders and push them to meet their potential, and don't solve all of their problems, and don't answer every question even if you have the answer. Push them to stretch, push them to get better. And as they sort of blossom into the role, that's when things really pivoted for us was when I built my division head team, and I started to really lean on them, even if I know the answer.
Yeah.
I started to really lean on them to like, do it. You do it, and then we have weekly meetings and go around the table and kind of ask each one of them, what are you doing in your area? What are your targets? What are you doing? And I think the more you do that, ultimately leading is essentially helping other people lead and helping other people reach their potential. And I think it's like being a good mentor or being a great sports coach to some degree. You have to play through your players on the field. And if you can't win through the players on the field, you're not doing a very good job. And at the same time, as a leader, you have to constantly be a lifelong student and never assume that you know everything. Never assume that you're great. Always go back and go, what can I do better? What else can I, what am I missing? How can I enhance this experience? And I think that the more you care about your people, the better you're going to do. The more you sort of invest into your people, the better you're going to do.
I love that. I think that is really good. And I love that element of empowering people, not giving them the right answer, not handicapping them by always trying to help, giving them a hand up instead of always a handout necessarily. I really, really like that. Now, Robert, with your business, as we talked about before, you're seeing some of the top organizations. I mean, just a quick look at the website. You've got Disney on there, AT&T, HP, and Dell, right? Some of the largest organizations, household names that we have here. But what do you think? And since you see so many sales teams, what do you think separates the good sales-driven organization and sales-driven team from the great sales-driven organizations, especially now?
I mean, for number one, sales is not a job. It's got to be a mission. It's got to be something that you want to be great. You distinctly are working to master your craft, and it's got to be your craft. It's not a job. It's your craft, and you have to want to get great at your craft the same way an actor gets great at the craft, the same way an incredible football player gets great at the craft. You have to treat it as your craft, and I think that when you do that, then you're going to go above and beyond. What sales books are you reading? Who are you watching? What podcasts are you listening? How many calls are you making per day? What are you doing to improve? And you start looking at all these different things. And I think the difference from the greats is that they study and are learning, and they treat it as their craft. They want to get great, and then they just do more work, quite frankly. I think that, it's easy for people to go, oh, it's a numbers game, and burns through some different things. But when you really drill into the greats, they're doing 3, 4, 5x what other people are doing, and they're committed to their craft, and they're getting better all the time. I mean, I've read quite literally hundreds of business books. I watch master classes. I listen to podcasts. I'm doing things myself. I'm also maybe making 50, 60 phone calls per day personally, and doing the work and in the trenches. And I balance that all. And so the amount of time that I've spent speaking to people and understanding the prospect, not just like what's my sales technique or what's the pitch thing or what's my next thing to say, but intimately understanding B2B enterprise sales and understanding what their journey is. And I know what they're going to say before they say it. That means I can solve problems, real problems, because the bigger the problem you solve, the proportion of the problem that you solve will be proportionate to your success, right? You solve little problems, you're going to have little success. You solve big problems, you're going to have bigger success. So you have to understand your market, you have to understand your audience, and you got to know it cold. Don't just try and pitch something. Understand your audience and know it cold. And I think the greats, the 1%, they'll take it to that level, and everybody else is just sort of going through the motions and treating it as a job and saying, I worked my off. And it's like, you look at the numbers, you look at the emails, you look at the phone calls, you're like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. They're just going through the motions at that point and sleepwalking through the day. Yeah. And I think you can see those reps as well, or you can see those individual sales performers. They're consistently in that like lower tier, right? They say, hey, I'm doing all these things. Why am I not getting the results of, the person who's always at the President's Club or in first place? Well, it's because they're not giving it that intention that you described so eloquently. I really, really like that. Well, let's transition a little bit since this is the Inside the Sales Playbook show. Robert, let's talk a little bit about your sales structure at your current company. It seems seems like a very sales-driven, aggressive type of organization. First, what is the sales structure, and how do you guys go about trying to find business and bring business in?
So a couple of things. We actually right now are very lean. We're incredibly lean. We've had a larger sales team. Last year I bought out my business partner and had some interesting things personal in my life, and so we got a little lean. And this year through this pandemic, we've taken just a really focused team approach. So we have a sales assistant, and then I have my VP sales and myself. And through this pandemic, we've actually basically taken a team approach, and we've, Ben and I have called 50, 60 calls per day. We followed up with the emails. We have the sales assistant send the proposals and the emails and change everything up. We've actually taken this kind of like 3-person team approach through the pandemic, and we've hit 4 highest evers in the history of the company for the month. Like we've beaten, I think it was like February and June and May or something, but we actually hit the highest ever months we've ever had in 13 years.
That's incredible.
Doing it that way. And we're already up over last year, all of last year's revenue. And so that's been really interesting kind of as a learning experience, because you would think, you go, well, you know what, every man for themselves, go and sell, do your thing. But actually coming together and sort of taking a team approach has been really an eye opener for me, because we can play off strengths and weaknesses and things like that. But we've had sales teams are 10, 12 people and a couple of sales admins and things like that, and we usually sort of divvy it up by company. But I would say this is a very unique year for us.
Okay.
And the approach has been, let's take massive action and let's work as a team. And it seems to be paying off. Right now we're looking to hire some sales reps and bring on some people and kind of break that up. But in terms of answering your question of how do we get business, there's a couple ways. Number one, we have a big client list, and we always go back and take care of our clients. We call our client list, we go back, we sort of make sure that we're touching our clients at all times and following up and bringing new, fresh ideas to the table. We built a demand gen sort of team engine internally. We did that from the very beginning of Richter. We actually used to offer it as a service.
Really?
And it would charge $100,000, $200,000 per year for it. And we actually recently pivoted away from that so we could focus on what we refer to as enterprise accounts and some other things for Richter. But so we have a team of I guess 7 or 8 people that basically do demand gen.
Wow.
And we have a system on how we sort of do our outreach, and we have some subscription to database tools and different things like that. We write copy, we write messaging, and we've kind of really focused and made that an art. We're quite good at it. So for us, we might get 20 to 30 new, we call them reaches or leads per week. Okay. Just from that alone. So we work on those, of course, and we're working at going after large companies, but at the same time, we have a big client list and we're always working on that. And at the same time, Ben and I do account-based selling. We'll also dive into a large Fortune 500 company and start making new introductions. We're not afraid to cold call. I don't even really consider it cold calling, quite frankly. I know people get all weird about that. Yeah. To me, it's just people and you're making relationships, and I enjoy it. And that's the other thing with sales is you have to love it. I don't find it scary. I don't find it a grind. I love it. And so for me, it's exciting. It's great to call, the CMO of Fortune 500 to make an intro. Yeah. And I think that if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to make it to the 1%. Not 1% in sales in terms of performance. And I think that you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and you've got to do things that others aren't doing. I mean, I'm a CEO of a, decent sized company, and people don't call me.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it's really amazing.
Yet here you're on the other end making 50 calls a day.
I don't think people realize this, right? But generally speaking, I don't get called. Yeah, my sales gets called. I don't get called. And I think about it and I think, wow, that says something about the field of sales and the people and their sort of modus operandi and how they're operating. Why wouldn't you call me? Yeah. Why not go straight to the top?
Well, I think it's a lot of fear-based, right? I think a lot of people don't want to start at the top. There's that perception of, well, the CEO's too busy. I'm going to get yelled at, or I'm going to be, 100%. Pushed off. No, that's not the case.
All just made up, right? That's just all creative in your head. Yeah. And you're telling this story to yourself. And the faster you can stop telling yourself made up stories, the better.
Yeah, I really like that. What's an element that you've learned with your VP of sales, Ben, over these past several months as you and him have really become a two-person as well as your sales admin, a three-person team going after some of these massive enterprise level accounts? I mean, these are some accounts that I'm sure a lot of other businesses and a lot of other full sales teams are going after as well, salivating at the thought of trying to land an account like that. What are some elements that you've learned over the past couple of months being in the trenches doing this, in which you'll translate to, as you mentioned, building out a bigger sales team?
We've certainly taken notes. I mean, we wrote out what we refer to as sort of the sales affluence model. And I think it's a combination of doing the work, right? Like setting the perimeters of like, what does your day look like? When you're in sales, it's like a football game, right? The whistle goes, you start the game, and then the whistle stops and the game's over, and that's it. And that's what your day is, right? So you get caught up thinking about yesterday, or you can get caught up thinking about tomorrow or next week. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is the day starts, the whistle goes, and the day ends, and the whistle goes. And you have to think about, like, what do you do inside of that constraint? And you think, well, what does the day look like? How many calls you're going to make? How many emails you're going to make? How many follow-ups you're going to do? What are the actions that you're going to do? So I think that you need to stack your calendar completely blocked out, and
so a total day, all blocked out, hour by hour. Do you do half hour by half hour? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's with specific activity of, hey, this is when I'm going to make my calls. This is when I'm going to send my emails. Okay.
Right.
That's great.
Because you need to be ultra productive, right? And the more you sort of obsess over orchestrating your day, the better you're going to do tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And while you're doing that, your experience is going to come up, right? Because you're going to flub and you're going to miss things and you're going to say the wrong thing. Now, when you think about what to say, it's like, have something to say, whatever that is, whether you have to write a patter or a little script on your thing and just sort of build in a pitch and then pivot as you need or whatever, but have something to say and then go and just take action and go and do that thing and do it over and over and over again throughout that day. Because you can spend a lot of time in sales that just gets wasted. And I think people are like, I'm busy. It's like, well, let's take a look how busy you actually are. And you start drilling into something and you'll find a lot of pockets of error. And you can spend time on your CRM. You can spend time talking about the imaginary things about what are happening on a deal. You can talk, you can find that you're obsessively going after the wrong person, and the more action you take, the better you get at these different things. And so I think it's important for you to map out what you would consider sort of the sales successful model for your day.
And do you have that at Richter? Hey, this is what the successful model that we want to follow, or you'll want your future team to follow as well?
Yeah. We actually, we write everything up. We actually created something also called the Richter University. And so we have, I don't know what platform it's on, but it's on one of these learning platforms. So we built it. So we wrote up essentially the manual of like how you sell here, and we're constantly refining and working on that. So we've had a lot of sales reps come here and say, this is the best training I ever had.
That's awesome.
And so we write everything up and we go through drills and like, this happens, what do you do? This happens, what do you do? This happens, what do you do? And I don't want to have technique salespeople where it's like robotic or anything like that. You really do need to make it your own.
Yes.
Right? You need to be able to think on your feet. But there are like foundational principles, and that you need to sort of train on the same way as like you need to learn football. Here's the rules and here's all the things, right? And then you need to work on your craft, become the best possible football player that you could possibly be.
I really love that. So really dialing in on what are some of those basic fundamentals. Hey, here's your tackling, here's your forward pass, here's how you run in a straight line. But how you put those in combination with other plays and with other teammates and other resources from demand gen is really what creates the overall sales playbook at Richter. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really, really like that. And I think what separates, back to kind of one of the earlier questions, the good from great sales-driven organizations is that level of intentionality that you seem to have put into the sales playbook of, we're not just going to let reps come in here and start selling and shooting from the hip, but really here's the process of how we sell at Richter.
Yeah. And I think just even to comment on that as well, like solving problems, like keep in mind, like when you think about what is your job in sales, your job is to solve problems, not just like jam something down somebody's throat, but you have to solve a problem. And so you go, well, what problem do they have? Like, number one, is it the right company? Is it the right target audience for you? Is it the right target public? Like, for us, we're obsessive about who we sell. We don't, we don't go sell a flower shop or something. Not that we couldn't help, but it's just not our audience, right? So we know our audience, right? And then we know the people within our audience. So we know the exact people we go after. I would say one of the number one problems that salespeople run into is wrong person. You got the wrong person.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to go to the right person, right? And then when you go to the right person, you need to identify and understand what problem you're trying to solve. And I think that when you can do that and you understand how to solve that problem, your life is going to get a lot easier. Then, of course, you need to do all the other things like the sales process. What's your sales process? Well, for us, it's like discovery, proposal review, selling, handling, asking, closing, just so, right? Like you need to know your sales process cold.
Yep.
But there's a couple basic like non-negotiables. You need to be able to solve a problem. What problem do they have?
Love that. Yeah. So starting there, what problem do you solve? And then for who? And then getting more into those advanced levels of actually using your sales process. Oh, Robert, I think that's really good. There's a lot of real great nuggets in here that I think the listeners are really going to find valuable. I want to, though, pivot here in our final time together. I want to close with the final 5. So, Robert, these are 5 quick fire questions. I'll ask them. You answer them. Are you ready?
Ready.
Awesome. Favorite sales related movie?
I gotta say Moneyball.
Moneyball?
I gotta say Moneyball.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite sales book?
I'm gonna say Ryan Serhant's book, Sell It Like Serhant. I mean, it's a toss up. I gotta be honest. Probably like What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School by Mark McCormick and Ryan Serhant's book.
All right, so we've got a tie here. What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School and Sell It Like Serhant by Ryan Serhant. What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first got into sales?
I guess I would just say I think just probably committing to the craft, treating it like a craft, and committing to the craft. Like if you want to become great, you have to start with that understanding it's a journey, just like acting or anything else. You have to commit to the craft and just work to get good at that and understand that it is a journey and it's not going to happen overnight, and just do it.
Love that. Really, really like that. Best purchase of 2020 under $100. Doesn't have to be business related.
Geez, I don't know. You got me best purchase under 100. I don't buy too many things under 100 these days. I don't know. I don't know.
How about a good meal?
What's that?
How about a meal or a decent cocktail?
I don't know. I'm gonna say these things right here, but these are slightly over 100. But having a set of these suckers are pretty good. These AirPods.
It's a set of AirPods he's got. Yeah. All right, we'll allow it. And favorite social media follow.
Favorite social media
follow.
Oh, I guess I have a few. I enjoy. I would say I've always been kind of a Richard Branson fan, so I enjoy his content.
Awesome. Yeah. And where can our listeners connect with you, Robert, if they want to do so?
LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Quora. I write a lot on Quora, and then I'm on LinkedIn. So I think it's linkedin.com/in/Robert M. Cornish.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we link to it in the notes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Robert Cornish with Richter. Thank you, Robert, so much for taking us inside the sales playbook.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you.